As Jim Mattis once famously said, make sure you engage your brain before you engage your handgun. Hi friends, welcome to today's bonus badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host as always, John Correa.
I'm your co-host Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from New York City, New York.
Today's video is brought to us by Mantis. The Mantis family of products is integral to ASP staff building handgun and carbine skills and are your most economical and fastest path to improvement in your skills too. Whether you choose the X10, the Laser Academy, the Blackbeard, or use them all in concert, they will help your practice be more effective, efficient, and fun. Go check them out, pick up a unit, and thank them for sponsoring today's video. As this one begins, our perp is actually gonna walk back into the kitchen of this little cafe and steal a couple knives. He had threatened a guy with a broken bottle just a little bit earlier and got called in 911. Now he steals some knives, starts threatening other people with it, running down the street. So multiple 911 calls, and you're gonna see a big response from NYPD here as they're, we're gonna see the first badge cam here is our guy who is actually going to end up taking a single shot at this guy. So he's gonna run across here, and you're gonna see the guy coming our way down the sidewalk. And as he turns here, officer draws a gun and takes one shot right there. It wasn't recorded on audio. We do have some audio from there, though. Let's listen in.
Watch out, watch out. Two knives. Where's the knife? No, we got it. We got it.
Next badge cam is from an officer who the guy lunged at. You can see him turn right there and lunge at the officer briefly. Then he's gonna run off some more, and our officer is then going to put his gun away in this case. Gonna keep the radio out a good while he goes and gets his taser. So now he's got his taser in his left hand and has apparently put his radio away at this point. So they're gonna keep chasing this guy down the street. You're gonna see him take a swipe at the officer who's real close to him. Finally, somebody gets enough taser prongs in this guy to get him to lay down, and they are then going to roll this guy over and get him into custody where he's gonna face a boatload of charges. We do actually have one more badge cam that I want to see. It's from the officer who was kind of across the street. So you see him coming up here, and watch how close it is as the shot breaks there. You can see the little puff of smoke from that shot come awfully close to that officer. And now this is the officer, and I want you to see how close it is, who gets the guy to turn around and try to take a big swipe at him with the knife as he is running away here. Everybody's got tasers out and chasing him through traffic at this point. And then they're finally gonna kind of get up on him, and he's gonna take that swipe right there, and then they get some taser prongs in him and put him down. He did live through this. The only injuries that the perp had were from the taser prongs, and no officers were hurt. Yeah, lots to talk about out of this one. It's quite a mess. So if you want to talk about the legalities of that stuff in depth, go over to Active Self-Protection Extra, our second YouTube channel. We talk about legal stuff there every Friday. Join us. Mike, there is an awful lot to work through on this one. You see, again, this idea that he comes out very, very quickly and is going to try to cut this guy off, and I really get that. I want to stop right here as things get going because there's just a cornuplethora of errors that are going on here because I think of the, just the cognitive load and how fast everything's happening. So, I see a finger on the trigger already before you made a decision to fire. I see an officer standing over on the left with his taser out with really no lethal cover. I see nobody else ready for this guy as he's coming. And it just looks like everything is harried here.
I guess I've never engaged in any kind of training where you're in the most crowded city in the world, in heavy traffic, heavy pedestrian traffic, with 37 cops and one crazy guy with a knife running through the cars. I'm not sure how you prepare for this exactly, but you're right. Let's talk about that finger on the trigger. You're not in a position to shoot yet. This is a universal rule. Everyone who does firearms training knows. Keep your finger off the trigger until you've identified a target and you've identified the need to discharge that weapon at that target. The officer on the left here with the taser was awfully close to a guy who had a knife with just a taser without any real lethal cover. It's a bit of a goat rodeo at this point, and it kind of remains one throughout this video. But NYPD never change.
And listen, not trying to be too hard. It's a chaotic situation, and I get that. And at the same time, like, man, you gotta, especially as you're coming up on this, you gotta think, this is fast moving, it is fast evolving, we need to get this guy in custody, but we gotta keep our thinker on. Now, of course, guy is running here, and I wanna note how fast the backstop changes. And when we talk about always keeping your firearm pointed in the direction of least consequence, I think pointing it at the guy who is threatening people with knives and running around the city is the direction of least consequence. But of course, that only is the case if you are confident enough in your firearm skills that you're going to make that hit and not send a bullet off into the most densely packed city in America.
Yeah, we often say, it's going to deadly force at whatever time is or isn't appropriate. In a crowded street in, I don't know if it's Brooklyn or Manhattan or where it is, you're going to have to take on a little bit more risk in a situation like this because there are very few good backstops. Maybe that brick wall to his left, that wasn't where the guy was. There's a ton of cars, there's a ton of other officers and just pedestrians in the background of this. And I think at some point we should discuss the grip and emptying your hands as well. In this case, it looks like, I think we said it was his keys, right? In his support hand?
Yeah, you can see there that, he misses. You can see the puff of smoke right there just to the left of our perp. And so that shot missed. Thankfully, didn't hit anyone else. But you can also see in the officer's left hand there, you can see the bottom of his keys. And this is a significant thing. And I understand that your thought kind of is, well, I don't want to drop my keys because who knows where those are going to go. But the bigger issue here right now is if you objectively feel like someone's life is imminently at risk, drop everything else and deal with whatever else that consequence is because you have to get a hit here. And the best way to do that is two hands firmly on the gun.
Yeah, and I'll say it, John. When I wore a uniform and when I was geared up, I had a giant D-ring stationary key holder on my belt. As soon as I got out of the car, that's where the keys went. They were out of my hand. So the keys should have been put away long before any of this happened. So that's something maybe you need to practice. I don't know, but put your keys away, put them in your pocket, put them on your belt, get them out of your hand, because I don't know how well I would shoot under stress in a rapidly changing environment with something else in my non-dominant hand. I just don't think this didn't need to go down this way, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and especially given the fact that almost certainly this officer has a New York trigger in his gun. And so, they are issuing regular Glock triggers to new officers. He's not shooting a Glock though, so he's probably shooting a very heavy double action trigger with a very compromised grip, and that's a very bad day. And of course, what's evidenced here is you see the officer, because of that support hand, that has compromised the officer's grip. They now have their thumb over the back of the gun, which if you do much shooting that way, you're going to get train tracked and slide bite from that gun. I will say, I think that this is a good decision here, that the officer sees, wait a minute, I've got a second to assess what's going on. And it's not a must-I-shoot situation right now, and so the officer doesn't. So I think the decision-making is good. I do think that the skill set here is deficient. And so across the nation, listen, if you carry a firearm for personal protection or if you carry a firearm professionally as an officer, especially as an officer, the department's not going to get you enough training to truly be proficient with that firearm. You're going to have to go practice on your own. You're going to have to invest some time to get good enough to hit on that day and put him down.
And let me add this, John. Not all agencies, but most agencies, they're going to give you enough training that they can check a box and they can say, hey, this person's proficient. We've given them all the training they need. And if you screw up, they're almost certainly not going to back you up. They're going to say, well, we trained him or her, and they didn't comport with our training, and therefore they're going to hang their cheese out in the wind. In this case, I know there's people saying, hey, we're Monday morning quarterbacking, 20/20 hindsight. Well, yeah, this is one of those times when we need to look carefully at what happened here. This grip and this having the keys in the hand is unacceptable. We need to get better. We need to work on that. So that's why we're pointing this stuff out.
Yeah, it caused a real risk to the community, which is where that is, and to one of his fellow officers. Thankfully, that risk wasn't actualized and nobody was ending up hurt there. So, okay, fine. Now, they're chasing this guy through traffic, and this is a chaotic, crazy situation. I think finally, once they get him down, okay, fine. Our guy's got lethal cover with the weird grip because of the stuff that's in his hands and all that stuff. Again, why is that not put away already? I don't know. But thankfully, they get this guy into custody, and okay, fine. And nobody's hurt. Big world, small bullet. Nobody got hit by it. We're going to give him a pass. But let's look at the second one here, because, again, similar stuff that this officer whose badge cam we're watching right now, police officer Mahaber, and you see this guy's turning towards him. He is an imminent deadly threat to the officer whose body-worn camera that we're looking at. But of course, he's not going to be able to get his gun up in time, not going to be able to get a hit because he's got that big old brick of a radio in his hand.
I used to work ops with Customs and Border Protection down at the San Ysidro and other border crossings. It's one of those situations, it's not unlike this, where you have 80 bajillion uniformed law enforcement officers all in close proximity, and you have a lot of traffic and a lot of things going on. I'm going to say this once. Why is that radio in your hand? Who are you talking to? There's 30 other officers there with you. This is the biggest case ever, the biggest example of you have all the tools you need at your disposal. You don't need, who are you calling and why? No one's been shot. There's no reason to call for EMS. There's no reason to call for anything. You have more than ample officers to handle this. Get that radio out of your hand. It should be on your belt or back in your car or wherever. There's no need for it. We're not communicating with anyone at this point. And this is just the umpteenth example of big agencies like LAPD and NYPD, where for some reason everyone's holding their handheld clunky radio in their hand. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but get a pork chop mic, get a surveillance kit, get something, get anything, get that radio out of your hand, because putting that away, you see that little fixture on the back of the radio holder, getting that put away is a fine motor skill. You have to put it upside down, fit it in that little hole, and spin it back around again. It's a whole thing. So drop it if you have to. This is what's happening right now. Get that radio out of your hand.
And again, I get it. When you drop it and you're like, oh man, I don't want to drop it. Well, you need to, because you got a big, significant problem coming here. And now as they chase this guy, I do think that we have a pretty significant problem, because we have both officers that are there, both have tasers. And here we see our perp take that big swing at the closest officer. And quite frankly, I think that we've moved certainly from Can-I, that this guy should have been shot in that moment. He is taking a swing with a knife at an officer who, at a distance of 3 or 4 feet, has a taser, which could be fatal to that officer. Somebody needed to have lethal cover here, and organizing that and recognizing we already have a taser out. I need to be lethal cover and put this guy down right now is a big deal.
Yeah, I got to say, this is one of those situations that we said earlier where there's not a lot of good backstops. I mean, right now, if Officer Mohabir had his gun out, he'd have been shooting towards a van that appears to be occupied. It's a tough call, but we always say that taser's not good from 30 feet away. You got to get a little closer. This is a little too close. I know it's a dynamic situation. Let me just say this. I applaud these officers. Their aggression and their desire to get in there and get this guy contained and protect the public is exemplary. I love that. It's just that these tactics are not ideal.
And I think that that's because it's so chaotic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we see this guy and he's running and he's outrunning us and all that stuff. And maybe, okay, we got to set some guys a block down the road so then that way they can kind of end up containing or whatever the case may be. My bigger point here is you got to keep thinking. Sometimes when you're just reacting to what's going on, you got to keep thinking, what's the next thing to come? And you got to stay ahead of the problem. We talk about this in flying stuff, and you got to stay ahead of the airplane. And if you get behind the airplane, you start making big mistakes. And same thing here. If you don't stay ahead of the problem, then you start running into significant risks. Now, none of those were actualized here. Everything ended up working out okay. And I know plenty of people are going to say, yeah, but it worked out great because nobody died here. Nobody ended up getting shot. And nobody was sliced to ribbons, and that's good, but we don't want to make hope a strategy. We just hope everything works out okay is not our best strategy. Now, the last one I want to talk about, okay, they get him into custody, everything's good, is the officer who is across the way here when that shot breaks. Because we joked about this off camera, Mike, that, if you want to get in a fist fight with somebody in your precinct, this is a great way to do it as you're coming up and the dude uses you as a backstop and then streaks a bullet and an angry bee goes by you 5 feet away.
Yeah, this is what we would call a code brown, because you're going to have to go change your uniform pants after this one. That's not... It's and I hate to beat a dead horse, but it needs to be beaten some more. This was not a good backstop to be firing a gun at a rapidly moving person. And I think officers and deputies and agents watching this, you already know your level of competency. You know your level of marksmanship. And if you can't hit this, you can't reliably hit a moving target. When your blood's pumping, your adrenaline's pumping. You need to not pull that trigger. I'm going to say it was a bad decision. And again, Monday morning quarterbacking, are we? Yeah, kind of. But it needs to be done. We need to get this stuff out in front of the public. And people need to learn these lessons, hopefully from an incident like this where nobody gets hurt, so it doesn't happen again in the future.
That's right. We got to do better at this so that we minimize the risk and better cover our ass.